So here's my messages we're sending today. We will not back down, we will not be broken, we stand united and we will win. To unite the union, to everyone who stood by us, thank you. To the Fire Brigade Union for turning down work, thank you. To every single worker, rep and supporter across the UK and beyond, thank you. Because make no mistake, a win for us is a win for everybody. Solidarity.
Thanks, comrades, and welcome to the 2025 NSSN Conference. Can I just say right at the beginning, as we will do every year, we have lost some supporters, some members, I'm sure in your areas as well. For instance, in our area, we lost our Unite branch chair, Tommy Anderson. We've also lost a couple of people who really are big supporters of the NSSN, and I want to mention two of them. One of them is Peter Taff, who was the General Secretary of the Socialist Party, was a big supporter of this organisation. And I also want to mention Joe Simpson, who was the Deputy General Secretary of the Prison Officers Association. Obviously, Steve is speaking today, and a dear friend and comrade, as both of them are as well. So for those I've mentioned, but for all those that you know, that we know, can we just give a quick round of applause for I just say that 1 year to the day, the Tories were kicked out of office, we celebrated, and Labour were elected, and I know we want to send a happy anniversary message to a few friends who can't be with us. Sir Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Yvette Cooper, Liz Kendall and others. They wanted to celebrate their year in office this week by inflicting the vicious welfare reform bill of billions of pounds of cuts against some of the poorest and most vulnerable in our community. And it is still out there. And Paula Peters will speak from DPAC today, and I'm sure some of you will as well. And next Wednesday, when the bill is its third reading, we will be there, like we were this week, at Parliament and other parts of the country with DPAC and anti-cuts campaigners and unions to fight for this bill to be defeated. Now, this bill is still there, and Paula will explain that, but make no mistake, what has happened this week is a massive setback for this new Labour Mark II government. I mean, it's enough to leave anyone in tears, you know. Although I have spent more time thinking about the tears of worry and panic of working class people, many of them in low-paid work, many of them relying on those benefits, losing those priceless benefits that keep the many wolves that are at the door. It is not yet a total victory. It is not yet a U-turn on the scale of the winter fuel allowance, but it is a sign that all unions should take heed of, particularly those across the public sector fighting for real pay rises and against funding cuts, that this Starmer government can be forced back and defeated. Isn't this a good time for the unions to come together, to bind together the pay and funding campaigns in education, the NHS, local government, the civil service and the rest of the public sector and mount a militant fight against what is increasingly a weak and crisis-ridden government? And I would go further. What about the unions approaching those left MPs like Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell, Afsana Begum, Zara Sultana, who have stood up to Starmer? Why not approach them to draw up a motion for Parliament, a private member's bill, to deliver on his promise he made a year ago to scrap the undemocratic strike vote thresholds? That means the strikes are illegal unless you get over a 50% turnout. You know, that 50% voting threshold, that would mean that 60 MPs wouldn't have got elected last year. That would mean that barely a councillor would be elected in this country, and yet they aren't banned from office. And we now know the cost of those thresholds not being scrapped. They're the cost of pounds, shillings and pence to workers in pay rises that are not enough, in jobs that go because of the funding crisis, with no news yet of when those thresholds will be scrapped. And yet Starmer can rush through the banning of anti-war activists in a few days. So a private member's bill, perhaps, to scrap those thresholds, including it the restoration of the right to strike for the Prison Officers Association as well. To call on the 49 Labour MPs who voted against the welfare reform bill to support it as well. And then the unions and the working class might have the beginnings of a political voice to use as a lever to complement and back up our industrial struggles. Now, there'll be many workers who a year later will be saying, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Like us, they will have celebrated the smashing of the Tories who inflicted 14 years of brutal austerity. But a year later, the Tories might be in disarray, but in the political vacuum that has opened up, reform are on the rise. The fantastic strike wave of recent years showed that it is only the trade union and working class movement, uniting over 6 million workers organised in the unions, leading millions, many more unorganised workers, that is the force that can challenge and defeat the division of Farage, that only divides workers and benefits the bosses. But to do that, as the strike wave showed, we need a union movement with a militant industrial strategy based, in my opinion, on a socialist political programme that raises an alternative to this horrendous capitalist world of poverty, of super-exploitation, of wars and climate change. A union movement that stands against any attempt by Starmer or anyone else to lull us into the false idea that there can be partnership or a national unity with the employers or his government, that is shown at home and abroad, that his starting point is the interests of the bosses. How can we have national unity with anyone who counts Trump as his mate and scrambles jet fighters to back up the vicious Israeli regime? He has money for imperialist wars, but not for workers and working class communities. He wants us to pay for the crisis, but not the rich. And now there's talk of delaying the much heralded employment rights bill until 2027 amid business concerns. In the last couple of weeks, comrades, I've heard one union leader, not on this platform by the way, say that some workers are impatient with this government. There's no magic wand, which sounds a little bit like Theresa May. There's no magic money tree to me. But there is a magic wand. There is a magic money tree. But it's in the banks and the computers of the capitalists, the fat cats and the bond speculators. And it's our money. Starmer's been forced into U-turns because of workers' anger, because of the pressure of brave campaigners and resistance. Imagine what we could achieve with mass union action. But you see, those concessions have been forced out of him. The reason they're called U-turns is because he didn't start there. Certainly no we would start. Ask the Birmingham bin workers today, who are up the back and will speak later, also the Veolia strikers from Sheffield as well. But ask the Birmingham bin workers about what it feels like to have a new Labour council, whether we can trust New Labour when a cutting Labour council using the worst Tory strike measures to try and impose pay cuts of £8,000 a year, and behind them a Labour government in total support and collusion. And some wonder why reform are gaining. A Labour government that, following on from the Tories, writes off the last £10 billion in returning NatWest to the private sector, fat cats, after we, the taxpayer, nationalised it to save it from collapse during the credit crunch. £10 billion, that's twice what the original plan of disability cuts was, and they can write it off. Why can't the debts of countless councils, like in Birmingham, like in Nottingham, like in other places around the country, why can't they be written off or extended? Those debts are to the government. And by the way, they aren't debts in the first place. This is our money, our jobs, our services, our communities that were robbed bare by the Tory government. And when bin workers are attacked in Birmingham, it shows that Starmer and his councillors are on the Tory side of the fence, not ours. Comrades, last year's NSSN Conference was a couple of weeks earlier, just before Election Day. And we made our conference into a forum to debate and discuss what a workers' manifesto would and should look like, just as the Bakers Union did with their Bakers' dozen policies. We said the Labour would win the election, but the biggest mistake in life was to indulge in wishful thinking. We were glad to see the end of the Tories. We fought them for 14 years. We were delighted to see them smashed, but we said that we had to prepare for the fight that was coming. As one Birmingham bin worker has said in the last 6 months, if you act like Tories, we'll treat you like Tories. So this is a conference, comrades, where you can discuss the way forward. There are no red lines today, no demarcation lines in this hall. You can raise anything, both industrially and politically, that takes the workers' movement forward. And we know there's a debate out there. I don't know if you've noticed, for a political alternative that's there in the workers' movement to discuss. And in September, there is another union conference, actually the TUC Congress, the Parliament of the workers' movement. But we want the voice of rank-and-file trade unionists, of workers and working-class communities heard in that Congress. We're going to be lobbying that Congress. It's on the back of the motion that we've done, a model motion to take away. We're going to support the motion that originated in Cardiff on the Trades Council there and was moved at the National Trades Council's Conference at the end of May and will be their motion to TUC Congress. I would say it's our motion at the TUC Congress, because it calls for the TUC to call a national demo against Starmer's austerity. It would be a big step forward in the fight against Labour's cuts agenda. Get it out to union branches, take it away, take it to your trades councils. Come to Brighton on September 7th to lobby the TUC. Join us in the fight to stop Starmer's austerity and the Boss's offensive. We fought the Tories for 14 years. We didn't fight them for this. Make the bosses pay, not workers. Solidarity.